You're listening to the Valley Current.
You know, there's probably an argument in some states that you actually need more population in a state. Like in states like Wyoming, what is it, like 500,000 people in the whole state?
And falling. So good luck, relying on closing the abortion mill to build up the population.
Well, it sounds corny, but, there is a public interest in having new workers come to support the Social Security system, right? I mean, there is actually sort of a logical reason from a public policy point of view.
Yes, but that's a policy issue.
Yeah, it's a policy issue. And, what I didn't see in the opinion was anything like, look, the truth is there are a lot of couples now, I guess even same-sex couples, that want to adopt. And there seems to be a shortage of kids to adopt. I mean, that's why this Russian adoption stuff was so big in the United States. Right now it's turned off because of the Ukrainian situation. But I mean, to me, I don't know what I was sort of thinking about. I thought you'd get a kick out of it. How many person hours went into this 90 pages, right? Someone had to write all this stuff. It didn't just get generated by some artificial intelligence automation.
How many clerks do justices have now?
Like on the order of 6 or 8 each, like that.
Oh, well.
It's a big group. And they also now hire sometimes people who are not right out of law school. Like there's some subset of it of like really more senior people that have been in
practice. If he's got 6 or 8 people, he can appoint the senior one and 2 juniors,
right,
and knock it out in a couple of weeks, right?
Well, what do you think? 3. I mean, what do you think? Because I could imagine Alito didn't leak this, right? I don't think. Well, let's just hypothesize that Alito is shocked because think about it from his perspective. Hey, I did a lot of work on this, and probably now the Chief Justice can say, look, we're pulling the decision. And we're going to have re-argument and maybe even rebriefing. And we're going to do a do-over. And I'm going to appoint somebody else to write the majority opinion.
Is it up to him?
I think Roberts has the power as the Chief Justice to do that. I think he can say...
There are 5 votes. I mean, assuming that they stay stuck. Yeah. There are 5 votes for publishing this opinion, but he can order re-argument anyway?
I think so. I mean, that's the technical issue. How do you bring credibility back to the court if you just say, yeah, there was a screw up, but this really is the decision? Because now you're going to get all these constitutional scholars to start weighing in on this is not right, and that's not right, and this footnote's incorrect. And can you imagine the markup process that's going to occur as different constitutional scholars of different bents say,
there are 2 theories about the leak. One is that an activist conservative was worried that the 5 votes would come unstuck and so published it to stick them. I think that's nonsense.
Yeah,
I think the situation is just what you said, that all it does is set up a target 2 months early.
Right. It seems more likely. I mean, I actually initially thought it was a cyber hack. Like it could be a cyber breach, right? Mm-hmm. It could be like we've breached into the computers and we gave it to Politico. And it could even be a Russian breach in theory to say, hey, your Supreme Court is now going to be broken. Every significant decision, we're going to find the draft version. I mean, I'm sure they're fortifying all their computer systems. I mean, these guys don't really even meet anymore, Bob. I mean, I think they do everything electronically. I think they mainly work from home, too. It's not like they're doing physical conferences. So to me, the computer system is, I mean, the Supreme Court is like one big computer system. And it's got to be non-hackable. And they made it sound like the leak happened from some internal source because maybe that's easier to justify than shit. The Russians have figured out a way, or, the Iranians have figured out a way, or the Chinese have figured out a way to break into our systems. I mean, that would cause havoc on some of these financial rulings that they make.
How far are the drafts such as this one circulated. I mean, do the other members of the majority get it? Do all the members of the court get it? Do you happen to know?
Yeah. The ticket on the top, they do the old-fashioned kind of clip on the top, says it was circulated to all of them at the same time on February 10th. There's this ticket on the top that says, to the Chief Justice, Justice Thomas, Breyer. I guess that's the order of their seniority. I guess Thomas has more seniority than Breyer.
Yes.
Right. And then Sotomayor is next, which is surprising because I always think of her as recent. Kagan, and then Gorsuch, then the three Trump appointees, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. So, to me, I don't know what it means to say this is from February 10. I guess that could mean that there is no other one. This is just, it's hard to believe this is a first draft. It seems a lot more.
Yeah, of course. Right? I mean, that was a stupid question on my part. Of course it's circulated because the dissent has to have something to dissent to. So of course they have to see it ahead of time.
What someone said recently is Roberts should require that each justice that gets a version has a different typographical error and a different footnote as a way to mark it, as a way to watermark it. And so then you could trace it at least into the chamber, right? Because it's like one of 9 different sets of clerks, right? Or individual clerk. Or it could be a computer geek inside the court. They've got an IT department. It could be staff, it could be a secretary, it could be a typist. I mean, there's a lot of people that handle this stuff. It could be a lot of different. I mean, I'm sure the other thing that you should know is there's all this buzz about who's going to be representing the clerks because they should all lawyer up because there's going to be some sort of heavy cross-examination.
According to the article you sent me about the Roe v. Wade leak, which was a lot less egregious than this.
Right.
Warren Berger was going to order all the clerks to take a lie detector test.
Right.
If the story was not revealed so they could do that, could they not? And if you refuse to take a test, you can be out on your ass.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's an interesting question. Like, what is the law? I think it's in the clerkship contract. There's a heavy-duty confidentiality provision.
Must be, of course.
Employee handbook and whatnot. But I mean, it's embarrassing. I mean, in some ways, it'd be less embarrassing if it was a cyber breach, but it may be more dangerous. The whole, our systems are being overtaken. What the hell do we do now? Some of these cases are going to affect the stock market. But, conceptually, I think Roberts has to do something more than just say, oh, I'm going to order a investigation and we'll get to the bottom of this. I mean, there's a taint factor now.
I don't buy the cyber leak thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be. Of course, I can't refute it. It doesn't seem to me to be the kind of thing that the FSB, the Russian security agency, would think of. I mean, who thinks of things like this? It's such an internal American affair that my guess, and guess is the operative word, my guess is that it is an internal leak. And my further guess is that it's from one of the dissenting justices' chambers. And my further guess that it will come out. They have to use thumb screws.
So you're saying you think eventually there will be someone who will confess to...
I'm saying eventually within 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's... look, there's all kinds of potential mistakes that I guess a young clerk could make about, hey, I brought this home. I mean, if you were in the government or the military, they would say you don't bring any hard copies home, but people are working from home. So, the pandemic kind of affects this stuff. People are doing more work from home and they're printing stuff at home. I mean, there's just higher risk profiles. But the interesting question for the integrity of the court, I mean, there's no draft dissenting opinion here. Now, you could argue there's going to be a lot of people that are going to help the drafting of that dissenting opinion in sort of almost a crowdsourced kind of way, because every professor that teaches constitutional law anywhere is going to turn their attention and their class's attention on this 98 pages. And I'm
Luckily,
sure
it's May.
May.
School's out. School's out.
Yeah, but it's worthy of, you know, special credit projects and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, it is funny because there was a footnote I saw somewhere that says, how can you study for a constitutional law final in the midst of all the stuff that's now turning here, right? I mean, if you think about it, it's like constitutional law is supposed to be something that's
you could say it gives rise to more profound questions.
Right. Exactly.
About the nature of about the nature of the judicial enterprise.
Exactly.
Let me go back to two questions that I've raised, but I want to continue them. First, does the fact that the Eighth Amendment was ratified by states that all had the death penalty in force settle the question of whether the Eighth Amendment encompasses the death penalty or not? Second question, if there is a liberty interest, which is undefined in the Constitution, but which is substantive, which people believe in, as in Griswold versus Connecticut, what's the difference between Griswold and Roe?
Yeah, I mean, I think Griswold argues in favor of that interest applying exactly the way Roe is decided. And then this case should have been probably a simple affirmance of.
So what's the difference between them? And my position, which not to tease you, is that these are both political, and again, in the sense of these are making policy, not reading the text of the Fifth Amendment. These are both policy issues, but when you're doing policy or politics, you can do it smart or you can do it dumb. And Griswold was smart and Roe was dumb. And the proof that it's dumb is that it gave rise to 50 years of never-ending and, in fact, ever-deepening contention. Good politics doesn't have that as a result.
Okay.
Candles or no candles.
So you're almost saying, hey, the fact that the Supreme Court gets to choose its cases means they should choose cases that will create constitutional doctrine and things like Griswold, and then leave to the circuit courts kind of figuring out where that all goes on the question of things like abortion, and just let that all play out in whatever way it plays out. Even if the circuits get divided, it's like part of the regional politics of the country, right?
That could be a lemma, and I wouldn't argue with it. My point is that the idea of settled law, yes, Supreme Court decisions should give rise to settled law. And when they are successful, they do that. And when they're hopeless failures like Roe, they don't do that. They give rise to further contention.
Right. I think the corollary of that point is sometimes it's better to have regional disagreement in the circuits. Like you could say the 11th Circuit, which is Florida,
would go one way and the first would go another.
Yeah, sure. and it would be a little bit like that's the region you're in, man. And that's the way it's going to go in the region you're in. And it's like saying the country has its own set of sovereign states, and the federal circuits end up respecting those different regions. And maybe that roughly correlates with the 26 states versus that would be an interesting map to look at. It's obviously coastal states tend to be more liberal, and the non-coastal states tend to be more conservative. But yeah, maybe that would be the outcome. And your sort of point is, when they dipped their toe in this, they really didn't figure out, like, another way to summarize this whole decision by Alito is, we should have never even taken the Roe case on certiorari. We should have just said, we're just going to let that thing churn its way until a statute gets passed. And when Congress gets the chutzpah to pass a statute or to call a constitutional convention and to try to get buy-in for doing a constitutional amendment, that's the forcing function of letting the circuits kind of go different ways, depending on what each of the different en banc decisions become, right? I mean, we have a version of that in the IP area, which is there's been a number of cases the Supreme Court has taken from the Federal Circuit, and now the Federal Circuit is in disarray. There's like a group of judges in the Federal Circuit that go one way and a group of judges in the Federal Circuit on patent and important other IP cases they get that go another way. And it's almost like there's regional disagreement within a court that was supposed to bring consistency to patent law. And part of it is because Supreme Court's dipped their toe and has sent some confusing signals, like this Alice Section 101 issue of whether something is within the subject matter of the patent laws, and it's created a lot of controversy. So, maybe the bigger point is when you're running a Supreme Court, you should be very careful to only take cases where you can do constitutional analysis and not do this sort of policy making, because once you get in the policy making area, you've politicized the court in a way.
Well, again,
damage.
Griswold did not cause problems. And also, I don't think it's possible to totally avoid policy. We do have a liberty interest. It's not defined in the Constitution at all, but we have it. And Griswold vindicated it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a question of yes, no, like a gatekeeper. It's a question of smart, dumb, as so many things are.
Right.
I still want to do this Eighth Amendment thing.
All right.
Assuming that all the states that ratified it had the death penalty, is that the end of the discussion? Or more to the point, if not, why not?
Well,
or how not?
Yeah, I mean, if you were doing a purely textual historical analysis, it probably would be the end of the discussion. But if you do the sort of larger question of what does a civil society mean at a point?
Right, the evolving Constitution, keeping up with the change in modern mores and so forth. What's your view?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're headed in a direction. I mean, we're getting there kind of in a slower way than probably anyone predicted, where basic needs, housing and food and all that jazz, are more or less covered for most, if not everyone in the United States in some form, whether it becomes part of basic income or something else. We're headed in that direction. So this idea of, hey, it's there are people that are criminals and they deserve the death sentence because they killed other people. We should just eliminate them. We can't afford to house them. We can't afford to.
Well, there's no point in it.
Right.
Well, I mean, when you put somebody in jail for the rest of his life with no possibility of parole, you're making his life a misery at great expense to everybody else. For what purpose?
Well, that's one view. That's one view. And the other view is, hey, those people sometimes redeem themselves and find religion or teach others. I mean, look at that guy, Madoff. He ended up getting like 6 life sentences. He eventually died in jail, but apparently the story is he taught a lot of criminals how to potentially like do better financially once they were out, like once they were out of jail. Like apparently he took on some sort of mentoring function inside that jail. I don't think that story has been fully told yet, but
without diving into the Eighth Amendment, what other basis is there but the historical one? If you do want to get rid of the death penalty, the fact that all the states that ratified it had one, what do you say? What do you do?
Well,
there's nothing. I mean, that's why there is originalism, because it gives you, or purports to give you, some tether, right? Some anchor. And if you don't have an anchor, it could be anything. Right.
So he gives you an anchor, and it says if you want to amend the Constitution, then you should amend the Eighth Amendment to say that, but the death is too far, and then you just do that, and then you correctly are engaged in what the founders would say is the right way to chart a new course, if that's what you want to do. And if you can get the required votes and all the required requirements, all checklist items checked, which, maybe it argues that has to be eased up in some way in a modern society.
Yeah, but what way? I mean, you're suggesting amending the Constitution to make it easier to amend the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to figure out.
It's difficult to do that.
Right. We can't even get elections. There's such a hassle to vote, comparatively speaking. I mean, compared to like people in Estonia, which has electronic voting. I mean, Estonia has like e-citizenship, where you basically can become a citizen of Estonia through an electronic application. I don't know that you get a passport out of it, but conceptually, there are these little tiny countries that have more modernization of what it means to be an active citizen in the modern 21st century than the United States. And we're the ones that invented the internet and invented the computer and a lot of other things. So it's striking that we've been dwarfed by these little tiny countries. But you'd have to create some secure, modern voting system that more and more people participate in, and that you get some real greater democracy out of it. And that's not in the cards, at least not in the foreseeable future. We seem to be...
No, again, it's hard to amend the Constitution, and amending the Constitution in order to make it easier is chasing its own tail, basically, right? I mean, You have the difficulty of doing that, yeah. So no, it's not going to happen. And we're not going... Wyoming may have 2 senators for 500,000 people, which gives them 80 times the voting power of California.
Right.
But you can't change that because any small state will resist the change. And so you can't amend the Constitution to change that. And on and on and on like that. Yeah.
Right. And there really hasn't been any suggestion, any suggestion for how you would restructure. And yet you could argue maybe the time has come to recognize that there's got to be some real restructuring if we're going to make it into the 22nd century. Where does this go if these 5 votes, essentially the 3 Trump appointees along with Thomas and Alito, are now a real dominant force on the court, and start looking at like that footnote as, there's a lot of stuff that we need to kind of discard. The way Gorsuch announced it, and the way Gorsuch has said the Chevron administrative state's got to be dismantled. These agencies have too much power. Like, if you take the view that, hey, this is just the beginning, this is just like the very, very first step of a conservative court that is going to do what other versions of this court couldn't do, even when, there were other conservatives on the court that were trying to do it and they couldn't do it. Now there's 5 folks who are sort of joined at the hip towards, hey, did you see that footnote? There's a lot of reversals that have occurred historically. There's a lot more that needs to be tackled to straighten out.
Depends on the 5.
Right?
It depends on the 5 and their own sense of probity. I mean, I don't think Griswold is on the chopping block, because I don't think there's any constituency or any significant constituency that's calling for it.
Okay.
It's possible that if they're all Catholic and they're all insane about contraception, you should forgive the expression, that they could do it.
Right.
But my sense is they're not that unbalanced.
Okay, so that's
right. So basically,
that's the last idea, which is this morning after pill that's been innovated that allows a woman to just get an over-the-counter pill, at least in some states. I assume there'll be deliveries from Canada or Mexico by mail order. Is that going to be outlawed too? Like, if a woman takes a pill that causes an automated abortion, there's no medical provider, there's no...
Well, as you say, it goes to the states. Texas passes a law saying, yes, that's illegal. Now you can try to enforce it. I suppose there could be a few cases in which women are prosecuted for taking that pill. Yes.
It's like a crazy outcome, right? If you buy the pill in New York, or you buy the pill in California and you take it there, and you have the abortion there, based on the medication that you receive or that you were prescribed, you're okay. But
I would think.
But if you do it in Texas, or you do it in Florida or Mississippi, then you could basically be jailed. I mean, that seems a little wacky to me. But then again, maybe that's what it means to have separate sovereigns with separate policing powers. And
isn't that what you're talking about with regional courts going different ways? Yeah.
I mean, you could say that's what the people that do federal criminal law will say. Well, in this circuit, the judges do this, and in this circuit, they do that. And you can get away with murder in certain places, and you can't get away with speeding in other places. So it does kind of raise the issue of the danger, I suppose, of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? And something happening. I think we're going to see a lot more discussion about whether or not this group of five, because I don't really count Roberts in this group, and I don't think he counts himself in it. So oddly, Roberts may become a lot more liberal as a result of this, or certainly be more like the middle of the pack. And so it will be interesting to see whether this becomes sort of their calling card for the next decade or more, right? And then the question is who's going to leave next? Maybe it's Thomas, and Biden gets to change the mix yet again. I mean, this thing flip-flopping based on Thomas leaving would be a wacky outcome, right? If that's what were to happen.
Well,
if he were to retire.
Thomas certainly does not have 10 more years. I would be
I think his wife has really shortened his health span based on all of her text messaging. So it wouldn't surprise me if he bails out during a Biden administration. Whether this one or the next one or whatever one happens. And
what you're saying is we're going to fight 2024 based on the composition of the Supreme Court again.
Yes,
I mean, they let the monkey out of the jar with Roe, and it's not going back in. That's all there is to it.
Right, and I don't think they can delay the ruling as if, well, we're just going to wait it out. I mean, I think they could do a bunch more briefing and a bunch more argument. I mean, this is the first time, I suppose, when they could try to spin this into, in state court here and sometimes in federal court, you get what's called a tentative decision, which is a draft that the judge will send out saying, well, why don't you comment and we'll argue from the tentative decision. And if you can convince me to change it, then I might change it. And I guess we have sort of a version of that now, because they could say, well, I guess this is our tentative decision, and we want to hear from all the litigants and all the amici on what do they think about it. And you get, a 2-page letter or something to submit, noting where you think the flaw is in all this. There's a lot here, and I'm glad you came on because you're insightful. I think at some point after you've digested all of this, we should do another session to talk about what it means for some of the other cases that I think the conservatives have been aiming at for a while.
Okay, let's work up a little agenda and we'll see what we can do.
That'd be great, Bob. You take care. It's good talking with you. I hope all is well there.
You too.
I'm glad to see that they're taking care of your health there. It sounds like a better system than the United States to me.
Very generous, very generous.
Seriously.
It's a funny story, actually. The Americans gave them 1 million, population 7 million. The Americans gave them 1 million J&Js a year ago, and China goes, well, here's 2 million Sinovacs. And so America says, well, here's 1 million AZs and 1 million Pfizers. China goes, well, here's 4 million. The whole population is covered.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Oh,
yes, the whole population is covered because of this bidding war between the U.S. and China. So don't let anybody tell you these Cold Wars don't do anybody any good. That is not true.
Yeah, so you feel probably safer there than you would feel in
Totally.
or New York, right?
Totally. We've had 700 fatalities first to last.
Wow.
Right? I mean, 1/50th the population, but even so.
But that's
Right?
still
We've had fewer first to last than America does in any given day.
yeah. So that's
Yes.
good. That's probably some of the best data I've heard on COVID.
Yes. I mean, there are little islands in the Pacific that have even fewer, but we've come through with flying colors. We really have.
Wow.
There's other issues, but basically we're going broke because of no tourism. So we have to, especially with the price of gas going up, balance of payments are a disaster. So we have to open. And now that everybody's vaccinated, I suppose we will. Because why the hell not?
You require visitors have vaccination cards and you're set, right?
Yeah, no, I'm sure that'll happen. In fact, I expect it this week, to tell you the truth.
Nice. Yeah. Well, how's your house? How's your house? Just a final question.
Oh, don't even
start. I want to see some pictures.
We haven't broken ground.
Okay. Well, that's a separate discussion.
The guy's computer broke. Then he was under quarantine. Then whatever. I mean, it's the kind of country where they just whatever a month or two away. It's
so
weird.
Are you still living out of a hotel, or are you living?
No. I rented a very nice 5-room place when I first got here, and I'm still here.
Like $500 a month or something.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You can live here. You can save money on Social Security here.
Wow.
Everything else is gravy.
That's funny. Wow.
It is.
Well, you have like a permanent visa too, right? Don't you?
I have an investor's renewable annual visa.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. Well, we'll talk again. Thanks, Bob, for coming.
Okay, let me know send me a written agenda of what you have in mind. We'll go back and forth.
All right. See you later.
Okay. See you later. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.